North and south, Bryan and Sass, life and death, peace and violence. Opposites attracted and from the sky impacted, the one form of life that caused me too much strife. I thought to run, I thought to hide, yet I can't flee this brutish bride, and with her back it's clear to see, fate wants us one, polarity. And with that, welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete, and with this lovely little poem that was sent to me by Leon, today we complete another episode of Rimworld Odyssey. We are still in the Scarlands, but Bryan and his colossus toad Heaser have been joined by Nelgraf, a disturbing occultist waster who seems to have come in peace. We also had the whole trouble of Bryan's ex-lover crashing last episode, the inspiration for the opening poem, and we might just add yet another pawn to our ranks, as the last episode ended with this 13-year-old girl crash landing and needing rescue. Now, despite being a young teenager, she's already pretty good with animals, a skill set that taxonomist Bryan would appreciate, and she could help our research too, something that is direly needed. So we bring her in, no question about it. Nelgraf is using some of our medicine to patch up her more serious injuries, and then we wait and hope for her to recover quickly. On the next morning then, we received the deserter quest from the Royalty DLC, and while this would give us another colonist and access to psycasting, I think going to war with the Empire might not be in Bryan's best interest at the moment. I simply feel like decisions on that grand of a scale are way beyond the scope of his troubles for the time being. So instead, we gather some building materials, then attempt to recruit Bryan's ex-lover once more, but progress remains slow, and with the stone we just acquired, we can now close off another room next to our small shelter. Just as we do, a local sow goes mad, but this could actually work in our favor. I've been thinking about hunting it with Nelgraf, but it was on the other side of the lake. Now it will come to us. Let's see how well Nelgraf handles himself in combat. Alright, fantastic. Our waster ally proving his worth, and he can now gain some more medical experience by patching up the sow's wounds before slaughtering it. Bryan would have done it differently, but Nelgraf is a weird one. We better not question his motives. In the middle of the night then, our teenage rescue decides to join our colony of Finster permanently, and brings with her the slight issue of ideology. She believes in the same one as Nelgraf, and thus Bryan is now in the minority. A problem that we'll have to deal with later though. For now, she needs a new name, and as always, chosen from the list of channel supporters in the naming rights tier and above, we welcome River to the series, named after patron supporter River Casey. Again, her skill set should have a fit right in. We might even be able to train her up in melee combat, although for now we'll give her some time to rest and recover. However, as Bryan can testify, crashing in the Scarlands is not a pleasant experience, and unlike Bryan, who's been steadfast so far, River soon throws a teenage tantrum, and honestly, who can blame her? Eventually, she cools off though, without permanently destroying anything. The catharsis moodlet is going to keep her sane for a while, and we can work on the ideology issue. Bryan has now switched to converting his ex-lover to the Stars of Som ideology instead of simply attempting to recruit her. With 2 people already at his side, recruitment is no longer quite as pressing as it perhaps once was, and I think this is Bryan's way of trying to maintain some control over the settlement. I could definitely see him feel like his role is starting to diminish with 2 followers of another belief system joining so soon after another. And let's not forget that Bryan wants to get away from this place largely because his ideology demands it, and thus he might feel that goal being threatened by Nelgraf and River. Up next then, we have a blight to deal with, much to Nelgraf's chagrin, as this affects all psychoid plants, pushing the relief of his next psychoid stimulant even further into the future. Once all diseased plants have been removed, we can then finally finish our construction project, and with some leftover stones we can even close off that large room to the left here too. The reason we're doing this is simple, and the presence of another boghound close to the base makes it rather important. We need to put our animals into a confined space. So let's move them into our new home, close the door behind them, and notice a group of travelers wandering by. Unfortunately though, they have nothing to trade and they move quickly, so we likely won't be able to have them help us with the boghound. On the next morning then, River equips a club we acquired last episode for self-defense, and we move the research bench into our new room. This is why we built it, so that we now have a dedicated laboratory, and get rid of the work speed penalty from having the research bench in our bedroom. This is a change made in the 1.6 patch, and I know quite a few people are not overly excited by it. Especially in the early game, it does make things more challenging, but I think it can also force you into building your settlements in a slightly more organic way, and deviate a bit from the standard optimized 13x13 box layout. Now, one additional positive effect of Bryan's attempt to convert his ex is that, unlike the recruitment attempts, this actually also improves his opinion of her. The other way around, we're already solidly in the green, but Bryan could stand to like his former lover a little bit better. It then looks like the day already ends, but it is only a grey pall settling over the Scarlands as Bryan replants the psychoid and gathers some steel. We need some new traps, and a second research bench would be great too. Just as Bryan then gathers some more stone block, the next raid is incoming, a lone pigskin with a Molotov. Now this could get tedious. I have no reason to believe that Nelgraf won't be able to handle this, but it will most likely take some time as we carefully skirmish outside of the Molotov's rather short range. To make things worse, River catches food poisoning from eating kibble. We simply don't have enough meals at the moment, and chopping wood to make more is currently not the highest priority. Nelgraf, meanwhile, is doing a great job. Despite his poor shooting skill, he has already dealt considerable damage to our attacker, even though his mood is suffering a bit, while his body is actually enjoying the fight inside the polluted parts of the map. As a waster, he gets a move speed and consciousness bonus for prolonged pollution exposure. Eventually then, he lands the killing blow, so no captives this time. Our enemies sadly did not have any food on them, but some nutri-amine that we'll gladly take, before we then take note of the fact that not everyone enjoys pollution, and that I accidentally moved the animals into an area full of it. So we've closed off a little corridor here, and can now move them over there. No trouble, the main focus is that they're safe. On the next morning then, the grey pall has subsided and the sun is out, and that means it's a great day for a short journey. As you recall, we still have this rescue mission quest here to break out an aptly named Yttakin, and it will expire in only 3 days. So, after he's proven his combat abilities, let's form a caravan consisting of Nelgraf alone, give him a bedroll, some food and medicine, and send him on a 2-day trip. The medicine is actually mostly taken in case we're ambushed. As the most valuable item in his inventory, any attackers might demand he hands it over as a price to avoid a fight, and I think that's a fair deal. Now, speaking of fair deals, just as Nelgraf packs his things to leave and Bryan brings in the next potato harvest, an exotic goods trader arrives. Unfortunately, their entire inventory is way too expensive for us, so as much as I would have loved to grab a boomerlobe here, we simply don't have the means to afford anything they offer. Since Nelgraf has taken our last packaged survival meals, we are also switching to raw food and kibble for the time being. I know, certainly not the best way to keep the mood up, but otherwise we'd have to constantly forage further and further for wood. I simply hope that we can sustain this until we either unlock electricity or can trade for better food with a caravan. The caravan that is already here then unexpectedly also helps us deal with the boghound. As it goes after one of their animals, they swiftly strike it down, and we have avoided another threat. A man-hunting rat then also meets a swift demise at the hands of the caravan guards, but eventually they pack up and leave again, and on the next morning the field work continues. By eating some of our crops raw or processed to kibble, we of course go through our supply a little faster than we would by turning them into meals, but I think we have a decent plot of farmland here and should hopefully be fine for a while. In the evening then, River is fully healed and thus all pain has been removed, which will increase her mood a bit, while Nelgraf arrives at the Yttakin prison camp. As expected, just a single guard, once again wielding a Molotov, and 2 turrets that we should have little trouble avoiding. So another rather tedious fight begins, although this time around it is a little easier to flank our enemy and get some decent hit chances, although in Nelgraf's case, decent is about 15%. Still, he strikes true with a few of his shots, slowing down the prison guard, who is in Yttakin too, by the way. Nonetheless, the fight takes several long minutes, during which we always stay out of the Molotov's range, really not overly difficult, mostly very annoying, and Nelgraf's mood is also dropping as a result. Then, eventually, one last shot connects and the enemy drops dead, leaving behind several fine meals that Nelgraf can immediately help himself to, before he then takes a well-deserved brief nap to recover his strength, and just in that moment, Randy rewards us with a psychic soothe. After a few short hours of rest, Nelgraf then carefully loops around the turrets and breaks open the prison from the back to free the Yttakin held captive inside. And as much as I love the name he already has, let's give him a new one too. Reino, another long-time channel supporter, and hopefully the correct pronunciation, otherwise please let me know. And, well, of course Reino is incapable of violence, so Bryan is not the only one any longer. Apart from that though, I'm glad we rescued him, because he looks like a fantastic fit. Great cook, incredible animal handler, solid doctor, and great at the social stuff, not to mention the fast walker trait. The biggest challenge could actually be his ideology, a complicated mess of animal personhood, raider, and pain as virtue, all bringing with them several extremely restricting precepts. So converting him will be high up on our to-do list, but for now let's have the 2 of them pocket what they can, harvest some berries on the other side of the map, and then make their way back home. Now, back home meanwhile, River has taken up research duties while Bryan takes care of food. The leather from the boghound was enough to make a 3rd bedroll, and so things are going well for now, until a quest interrupts the night. An Imperial shuttle looks for a place to crash land, being followed by Yttakin pirates. Now, a 13-year-old with a club and a non-violent taxonomist with his toad are likely no big help, but on the next morning we accept the quest anyway. Who knows, depending on the size of the raid, the lone cataphract here might just be able to hold their own, not to mention that the shuttle commander carries a powerful monosword. Unfortunately though, as the 3 melee-wielding Yttakin arrive, the cataphract goes down so quickly they can't even fire a single shot, and the commander doesn't fare much better. So we fail the quest, but that was honestly expected. The main prize are the meals and the shuttle, which we can now disassemble for precious resources. Speaking of which, Bryan is in the process of gathering more stone blocks. I think our 2nd research bench will be built from those, just to save some steel for projects that have no alternatives. The conversion of Bryan's X is also progressing nicely, just a few more visits and we should have a believing in the Stars of Som. The peace and quiet does not last long though. The next night River comes down with the flu. Now we'll treat this without medicine for now. With enough rest she should survive even in this case, and if things get bad we can still apply the good stuff later on. Then, as Bryan once again chats up his former lover, our rescue mission returns home. Nelgraf and Reino have arrived safely and can now gather some more steel on their way back to the shelter. Bryan, meanwhile, has collected enough stone blocks to build a 2nd research bench with them, reducing the need for steel from 100 to only 25, albeit at the cost of a longer construction time. Still, in the early stages here, I think that's well worth it. In the middle of the night then, he visits his ex-lover once more, and this time she sees reason. The Stars of Som have another follower, and we earn our first ideology development point. Now begins the long and tedious task of recruiting her, but maybe we can rely a bit more on Reino for this. his social skill should be up for the challenge. For now though, our Yttakin takes care of River's flu, which is indeed progressing slower than the immunity, so we are on a good path here. Our colonist's mood meanwhile is approaching extremely poor levels, and we will likely see our first mental break soon. For now though, Randy spoils us with some spacecraft chunks right next to our home, a neat source of steel and components, and Goat Salonic has also just given birth. Unfortunately, the young one will not be allowed to live long, as it is a male and thus won't produce precious milk. As a result of his continued lack of psychoid drugs, Nelgraf then also starts to hallucinate and will be out of our control for a while, so 13-year-old River has to undergo the task of slaughtering the goat. Not really something a young teenager should do in my opinion, but we have no other choice. While he is incapable of violence, Reino can then at least butcher the animal while we have the next batch incoming. They were obviously not all laid at the same time, but Rimworld can sometimes be a little weird with stacks of eggs, so we now have 4 chicks hatch simultaneously. Sadly, once again, there's only 1 female among them, so the other 3 will get slaughtered. River is already standing by to prevent them from touching our food supply. The one surviving female then receives the name Tydram after a channel supporter of the same name, before we then have yet another toxic rain setting in, a repeat occurrence here in the Scarlands, and another reason why this biome is so incredibly hostile. But on the bright side, research bench number 2 is now finished, and once Nelgraf snaps out of his mental break, I'm hoping that we can make some good progress towards finally unlocking electricity. Nonetheless, the situation is all but rosy at the moment. Bryan's organ decay is progressing, and I'm not sure how much longer we can delay a risky operation. Our lack of cooked meals has an effect on colony mood, alongside the disappearance of the initial optimism. The various ideologies we have assembled are definitely clashing too. Then we've got 4 pawns and 1 prisoner living in tight, shabby quarters, while outside temperatures currently sit well above 30 degrees Celsius. And on top of the toxic rain, Randy now also sends a psychic drone our way. Good thing that Reino is psychically dull, but Bryan and Nelgraf will feel the full effects of this as another night sets in. Bryan then also starts to hallucinate just as I was about to make the cut, and I think we'll leave it here for today, and we'll pick things back up next time. As always, I've got some fan art for you to enjoy, which gives me a moment to talk about the current state of the playthrough. Honestly, I had not expected the colony to grow so quickly, and it might come back to bite us, especially considering how little actual fighting power the people in our settlement actually have. Still, we've got ourselves the beginnings of a nice little squad here, probably the most unique assortment of colonists we've had on the channel in a while, but I feel like that only helps to keep them distinct from each other, even if we're introducing new faces pretty rapidly at the moment. In the next episode then, I think we have no other choice but to rush electricity with full force. Maybe we need to even build a 3rd research bench. I sincerely believe that once we have reached that point and can finally make meals again, I think we should see some improvements. Until then, life will likely remain tough for our small band of misfits. Now, if any of you have any suggestions that might help improve the situation in the meantime, then by all means feel free to let me know. And of course, if you have any artwork to send in, then simply send me an email to pete@petecomplete.com. Now, as we wrap things up here, let me also quickly plug the Pete Complete merch store, which is offering free shipping on all UK orders this weekend, as well as free shipping when you reach a minimum order value for all US and European customers. So go check that out if that's of interest to you, and that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then I would be happy if you could leave a thumbs up. And as always, if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.